listener production.
Imagine you're thinking about killing your spouse. Do you Google how to plan a murder? And do you catch a taxi to a hardware store to buy your murder weapon? I'm Dan Mullins. This is Crime Insider's Judgment, a deep dive on a judge's final verdict of a crime and what transpired to incite that judgment. In this week's judgment, it's the Crown versus Gina Kennedy, an alias given to the offender by the New South Wales Supreme Court. Gina was accused of murdering her partner, named Joseph, by the court in September 2020. But was this crime cold-blooded murder, or was it the tragic consequence of years of sustained abuse? To begin, I want to acknowledge the fact that in Australia, domestic violence remains one of the leading causes of death, disability and illness for women aged 18 to 44. According to recent data from the Australian Institute of Criminology, around 1 woman per week is killed by her current or former partner. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare says 1 in 4 women have experienced physical or sexual violence by a current or former partner, while for men, it's 1 in 14. The abuse can take different forms: physical abuse, mental abuse, even economic abuse. The relationship between Gina and Joseph began in New Zealand in 2006. Gina, a young woman of 20, met Joseph, a 22-year-old, at a church dance. Their connection was immediate, sparking a relationship that would endure for years, marked by both passionate love and turbulent conflict. Early on, cracks began to appear in their idyllic façade. Gina, already a mother to a young daughter named Carmen, displayed a possessive streak driven by jealousy and suspicion. She scrutinized Joseph's belongings, searching for evidence of infidelity. She was overheard saying, "I know he's been with other women. If I get proof, I'll bash him." The birth of their first child together in 2011 marked a turning point as the young family relocated to St. Mary's in Australia. In December of that year, a heated exchange escalated into physical violence. Joseph struck Gina repeatedly, leaving her bruised and with a cut on her lip. She took refuge in the laundry, calling police for help. This incident led to Joseph's first conviction for assault, a fine serving as a meagre punishment for his actions. The following years witnessed a cycle of conflict and reconciliation. Police were summoned multiple times, responding to reports of domestic disturbances, but the interventions seemed futile. By 2014, the turmoil had reached a breaking point. Gina's daughter Carmen, along with the couple's 3 other daughters, were sent back to New Zealand to live with relatives. Despite the upheaval, Gina and Joseph remained together in Australia, their relationship clinging precariously. Just a week after the children's departure, a desperate act revealed the depth of Gina's despair. Joseph discovered her inhaling kerosene, a chilling suicide attempt that landed her in hospital. Their 4th and youngest child was born a month later. In 2015, overwhelmed by the weight of their circumstance, Gina returned to New Zealand, leaving all 4 of her children in the care of Joseph's mother. By 2016, she was back in Australia, reunited with her 3 daughters with Joseph, while Carmen remained in New Zealand under the care of Gina's family. The fragile peace was shattered in 2019. Another violent altercation erupted, fueled by Gina's persistent accusations of infidelity. This time, Joseph retaliated, throwing bottles that shattered near Gina, leaving her with cuts to her feet. Despite Gina's claims of death threats, Joseph denied the allegations. He was, however, charged with assault and placed on a conditional release order. In 2019, Gina briefly engaged in a relationship with another man, Mr. Dorval. While this relationship was short-lived, they continued to communicate. By February 2020, Gina and Joseph had moved in together again. A court will later hear their daughters also moved in with them. A pattern of arguments continued. On the 10th of May 2020, just 4 months before Joseph died, a chilling digital trail foreshadowed the tragedy to come. A Google search originating from Gina's mobile phone inquired about a topic: how to plan a murder. In June that year, Joseph and Gina's children were all removed by the Department of Communities and Justice following an allegation of physical abuse by Gina on the eldest child. The couple was subsequently allowed supervised visits with their 4 children. In July, Joseph told a caseworker he wanted to leave Gina but was too scared to tell her. The caseworker agreed to tell her instead, to make the news more acceptable to Gina. A court later heard when the caseworker told Gina the relationship was over and she ought to move out, she became angry, rude, and abrupt. Gina's online activity escalated. Her searches included executed in error, the 5 top poisons, secrets of the dead, what methods are used to poison someone, and poisoning your lover's coffee or tea or smoothie, painting a disturbing picture of her intentions. That same month, Gina informed a caseworker that she had separated from Joseph. However, behind the scenes of this facade of separation, the couple remain entangled, their relationship continuing in a dangerous dance of codependency and conflict. From the Crime Insiders Forensic Podcast, episode number 126, host Catherine Fox spoke to Dr. Jenny Mackay, a forensic psychology lecturer with expertise in women who commit interpersonal violence, about the nuanced differences and similarities between male and female perpetrators and what these insights mean for tackling domestic abuse in all its forms.
If we kind of just go back a little bit and think about domestic violence more broadly, which some researchers argue that actually in order for us to label behaviour as domestic violence, we need to see an element of coercive control. Actually, women and men as perpetrators are more similar than they are different, is what the research tends to show us. So there are some small nuanced differences that are important, but generally speaking, we tend to see very similar, what we would refer to in the field as criminogenic needs. So they are the needs that are what we'd call the risk factors. So the things that exist in somebody's past or in their present life that raise the risk that they're going to perpetrate violence or abuse in a relationship. And we tend to find that men and women have fairly similar profiles when we look at those criminogenic needs. With my own research with, again, people who are in prison, so those kind of the again, more extreme cases, the main differences lie in how isolated the women feel. That was something that came through when I spoke to women. So we see very similar trauma histories, more sexual abuse for the women in their past, which again is probably not surprising. And what we would generally tend to see is that women do tend to have been more likely to be sexually abused as children and as adults. But the sense of isolation is what really came through as a key difference between the men and women who perpetrated. So for men, the violence in their lives was very normalised. They were able to find friends and buddies in kind of all walks of life, even if that was antisocial type behaviour. There'd be people that they could hang around with and create connections with, even if they were negative type connections.
August 2020 was marked by a series of troubling events. After Joseph had a lengthy phone call with his mother, Gina lashed out, attacking him with a meat cleaver. Joseph's call to emergency services brought police to their doorstep, leading to Gina being issued an apprehended domestic violence order, or ADVO. Despite the order, Gina briefly sought refuge with her church pastor before returning to Joseph, violating the ADVO and reigniting the volatile cycle. Just days later, a chilling voicemail message left by Gina for Joseph's aunt hinted at a sinister plan. "Goodbye," she whispered. "Sorry for everything. Don't forget to look after my children." Between September 3rd and 5th, Gina's internet searches took an even darker turn. Her queries revealed a growing obsession with violent methods of killing, focusing on knives and boiling water. One particularly haunting search asked, "What's the best way to use a knife and kill someone? A mate and I are debating, and someone has to know." Coming up, the court's assessment of Gina's mental well-being and what she told police occurred on that fateful night. From the Crime Statistics Agency and Victorian Family Violence Database covering 2022 to 2023, just after Joseph's murder. There was a significant increase in the number of cases heard in the Specialist Family Violence Court Division of the Magistrates' Court due to more specialist courts commencing operation. 22,916 original family violence intervention order applications were heard in the Specialist Division, compared with 8,438 the year before. Again, this is just Victoria. This indicates that more family violence cases are receiving specialised treatment in court, with staff who have been specifically trained in the complex dynamics of family violence. On the evening of September 11th, 2020, while Joseph enjoyed a night out with friends, Gina spent time with a man she had met online, a Mr. Marouche. She confided in him, expressing her anger and desire for revenge against her ex. As the night wore on, Joseph found himself pursued by another woman, Ms. Smith. He confided in her, revealing his tumultuous relationship with Gina, describing her as violent, dangerous, and recounting a previous attack where she had macheted his back. Throughout the night, Gina bombarded Joseph with text messages. She even reached out to another man she had been involved with, requesting that he call Joseph's phone and inquire for a Richard, hoping to confirm her suspicions of infidelity. Meanwhile, Joseph, torn between his turbulent past and a potential new beginning, decided to part ways with Ms. Smith. They exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch, with Joseph expressing a desire to pursue a relationship with her. At 6:20 p.m. on September 12, 2020, Gina took a taxi to Bunnings and purchased a half-axe. Security camera footage captured her chillingly calm demeanour as she selected the murder weapon. Upon returning home, she continued her Google research, focusing on the most effective ways to use an axe to kill someone. At 8:43 p.m., Gina's internet searches confirmed her intentions. Queries like, killing someone with an axe, what part of body to go for? And what is the fastest part of body to kill someone with an axe? At some point during the night, she meticulously deleted all text messages exchanged between her and Joseph, attempting to erase any trace of their communication. An Uber Eats receipt found at Joseph's home indicated an order placed at 1:59 a.m. on September 13th for a double Big Mac meal and a double quarter-pounder burger, suggesting Gina may have remained at the scene for hours after the murder. At 9:40 a.m. the next morning, Gina was captured on CCTV footage of the Oxley Park supermarket on Sydney Street. She was wearing a grey, long-sleeved shirt, long black pants and slip-on shoes. Her hair was in a bun, and she was wearing sunglasses. The shop owner knew her as a regular and noticed her clothing was different. She had makeup on and her hair was neat. When he asked her whether she was going out with Joseph, she said, "Yeah, I'm going far," and headed back towards Joseph's house. At 11:45 a.m., Gina called a sister in New Zealand and said, "I have done something bad." She then had a conversation with her parents. A few minutes later, she called a taxi. CCTV footage from the neighbour shows her outside smoking a cigarette. She waved to her neighbour. The taxi arrived and she asked to be taken to St. Mary's police station. Around midday, before entering, she called Joseph's aunt and left a voicemail requesting to call back. She called again and told her, "I just killed him. I have already told my family. They were screaming, saying they are not going to see me. I am so sorry for what has happened, and I hope that you still love me." She then added, "It was self-defense. I have the keys to the place. I have to turn myself in. I'm at the police station already. I'm just finishing my cigarette before I go in so they can take his dead body out of the place." At the police station, Gina provided a detailed account of the events, claiming self-defense. She alleged that Joseph had arrived home drunk and angry and had attacked her with a knife while she was sleeping. She claimed to have fought back, grabbing the axe in the process and striking Joseph multiple times. However, serious inconsistencies emerged in Gina's story, raising serious doubts about her self-defense claim. Joseph's autopsy showed no alcohol in his system, refuting her claim that he was drunk. The lack of defensive wounds on Joseph, the positioning of his body, and the absence of signs of a struggle all pointed towards a premeditated attack. The internet searches, particularly those focusing on methods of killing someone, and the CCTV footage further eroded her self-defense narrative. Gina later pleaded guilty. Justice Natalie Adams was unable to pinpoint the exact time of death. The Crown didn't accept Gina's account that the motive for the killing arose from a long history of domestic violence, that Joseph tried to murder her on several previous occasions, nor that she reported such incidents to Joseph's family, because no such incidents were reported. In her judgment, Justice Adams said, "I have already summarised the evidence on this question. The relationship was clearly a volatile one. I am satisfied that Joseph assaulted Gina in 2010 and early 2011 and again in 2019, about a year before the children were taken away, when he threw bottles on the ground, which smashed and caused some lacerations to her feet. I am also satisfied that there were numerous verbal arguments between them, but I am not satisfied of the death threats that Gina reported to police said to have been made by Joseph in the months prior to his murder. Overall, I am satisfied that although the relationship was a volatile one and there had been recorded instances of Joseph assaulting Gina from early in the relationship, I am not satisfied on the balance of probabilities that the motivation for the murder was blacking out and striking him while thinking of all the violence he had inflicted on her. Although she may have thought about that to some limited extent, I am satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that the motive for the murder was jealousy and revenge for him leaving the relationship." The court heard testimony from forensic psychologists. Gina told them that when she killed him, she was another person, an evil person, and that Satan was in her. She was not me, as she is normally very religious. She was very angry after they argued. She said she was sick of it and not in my right mind when she went to Bunnings to buy an axe. She said that when she killed him, her mind was not thinking straight, that her mind shut out completely. She was driven by a fear of what he could do to her and anger at the frustrations and problems in the relationship. However, after a comprehensive and thorough examination, it was concluded that Gina didn't suffer a significant mental illness or psychopathology. In closing, Justice Natalie Adams said, "I have applied a discount of 25% to the sentence on account of Gina's offer to plead guilty in the local court. But for that offer, I would have imposed a sentence of 36 years imprisonment. I have applied a 25% discount to that and have arrived at a sentence of 27 years imprisonment. I have varied the statutory ratio to some extent, but given the length of time that she will be supervised in any event, I do not consider any greater variation than 70% is required." The final judgment: Gina Kennedy was convicted and sentenced to imprisonment for a term of 27 years with a non-parole period of 19 years. The full sentence is from the 13th of September 2020 and expires in September 2047. The non-parole period will expire in 2039. So if she behaves and partakes in rehabilitation, she may be out of prison in 14 years. Dr. Jill Tomlinson from the group Counting Dead Women estimates 78 women were killed in 2024 due to gender-based violence. These numbers highlight the urgent need for a multifaceted approach to combating domestic violence, one that includes legal reform, greater public awareness, and increased support for victims. If you or someone you know needs to speak with someone today, call 1-800-RESPECT. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 1-800-737-732. 1-800-RESPECT. Thanks for listening to Crime Insider's Judgements. We love hearing your feedback, so please rate and review this episode. If you have a case you want us to cover, let us know via Instagram at Listener Crime or TikTok at Listener Crime Team. The audio in this episode of Crime Insider's Judgment was imaged by Link Kelly. It was read by me, Dan Mullins. This series was recorded and produced on Gadigal land.